And if I had to be another person to stand up, if I think, after really going through this, and looking at the files and looking at the case, if I really feel that Karen Reed didn't do this and I have to be a voice that stands up and helps, I will.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
We're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Now, just be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in his blood. I was the only one trying to save his life.
Why'd you admit to it?
She didn't admit to it. She didn't admit to anything close to that. Nothing close to that. And you should know that.
That was like 3 or 4 times she admitted to it.
No, she didn't.
That's not true.
She asked a question. She asked a question, which is very different. She didn't admit to anything.
I'm going to tell you one thing. Karen Reed's not going to fold. Karen Reed's not going to give up. Defense team's not going to quit. The Free Karen Reed movement is going to continue. We will continue to raise funds for her. We will continue to do standouts across Massachusetts, across the nation, across the world to let everybody know what's going on here in the state of Massachusetts, the corruption. And we will continue to get the word out there. Believe me.
All right. Here we are, day 9 in the Karen Reed retrial. I feel like it's been 3 months. I literally feel like it's been 3 months already. But today it felt like testimony was moving along at a quicker pace. And today we got to see the ending, part 2 of testimony in Hannah Knowles, the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab technician. We saw Ryan Nagel today. We saw Heather Maxson, Sarah Levison. And then it ended the day with Katie McLaughlin being under cross for quite some time. And then we started to get into cross with retired Lieutenant Paul Gallagher of the Canton Police Department. Do you all feel like it's been like 3 months already? I literally feel that way. And we're just getting into, again, day 9 here of the Karen Reed retrial. Lots of action in the retrial today. We saw, again, Katie McLaughlin, the crossbearer, is back wearing the same outfit that she wore during one of the days in her cross-examination. So I found that to be pretty funny. And, I was pretty active on Twitter today. I know Aiden was tweeting a lot out today. And we saw a win. We saw a win today for journalism in Massachusetts and for Turtle Boy Aiden Carney. And we're going to get into that today. Let me bring in my special guest here, bring him on board. I don't want to wait too much longer here. Let's bring in Jason Broyles from the Not Hailey Walbrecht X account.
Got it.
Welcome to the show again. It's good to see you, my friend.
You too. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, lots of action today. I felt like the testimony, they were kind of moving it along where, the 8 previous days kind of was sludging through the mud. What did you think about today's testimony?
I thought there was a plenty of interesting stuff today. They really did move through kind of that whole group of witnesses quickly, with the Ryan Nagel and Heather Maxson and that whole group. So I thought today, I kind of like days like today because those long directs and those long crosses probably how the jury feels. You get in this situation where you feel like you're almost fatigued, but today because they got a lot of witnesses in one day, I never kind of felt that way today where I was losing my train of thought or whatever else. I was able to kind of hone in on the testimony. So I kind of liked it. Yeah. It is super surprising to me that it's only day 9 though, because you're right. It feels like we're months in.
It feels like we've been months in.
Yep.
It really does. Yeah. So we started out the day with the second half of Hannah Knowles. I understand you're establishing the blood alcohol level. I was kind of like tuning in and out during that, but I really wanted to see, when we saw Ryan Nagel
Heather Maxson, Sarah Levinson, and then it built up to Katie McLaughlin and then Gallagher at the end of the day. I was more interested in that middle testimony because Ryan Nagel is actually a great witness for the defense. Now, he did a little turn on us today, and I caught that. He changed his story when Hank was on direct with them, but Jackson at the very, very tail end got him to come back around and basically said that he did not see anyone inside the black SUV except for Karen Reed. And I just said, there you go. I mean, John was in the house. He's not walking around. He's not in the yard. He's not laying on the yard. He's not hanging out, walking up the street somewhere else. It puts him inside the house. So I think Hank kind of laid out, was trying to tailor that testimony, head, Ryan Nagel in a certain direction. And then, again, Jackson comes back around and gets it. It almost looked like Ryan Nagel was completely frustrated to be up there. Like, I think he's done with this. I think he's absolutely done with this.
I think you're right. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing the general trend being. But there was at one point where I kind of got a giggle because when the ambulance started to come, you could hear the sirens and Ryan Nagel put his finger up.
Yeah, he goes, wait a minute.
Like, oh, wait a minute. Like now he knows what happens at this moment, so he's adapting to it. I think that what Hank was doing there with that series of witnesses is he kept trying to harp on the light was on inside because the passenger door must have been open, and that's where he was trying to drive them. And I don't think he did it successfully. You could see that it's pretty evident what he was doing, but none of them kind of took the bait and filled in the gaps for him there. Back to the state police criminologist. I'm sorry, I forgot her name.
Hannah Knowles.
Hannah Knowles.
Hannah Knowles.
Hannah Knowles. Yeah. Sorry. The one thing I like about Hannah Knowles is she really is what a professional witness should be, in the sense that when she was talking to Yannetti about the serum conversions and then the retrograde extrapolation, try and defend any of that, she really did appear to be kind of the perfect expert witness, in the sense that she came in, she discussed her thing, she admitted to the weaknesses in the methodology used, and that was that. So I did like her from that standpoint. I think that's the kind of witness that's helpful to the jury, because they don't have to, we can call the score whenever, with all of these, especially fact witnesses, when it's up, it's not hard to see, oh, well, Jen McCabe is pushing you toward one position, and even beyond, just answering the questions, she's almost advocating for a position. And you didn't see that with that one witness, and it may be the only witness in the trial that would get like that. But yeah. I really did appreciate that aspect of her testimony, and I also don't think that testimony moved the needle much. People kind of believe what they believe. I don't think that we all believe that Karen had some level of intoxication, I think, because I don't think that's in dispute. But I also don't think that I thought it was excellently handled today with Yannetti by pointing out that you'll never be able to come up with a number that was her blood alcohol level at the time. You're never going to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how the jury interprets that later on down the road on any of the charges involving alcohol.
Yeah, one thing I did learn today is that I didn't realize that there are different blood tests for alcohol, separating the blood in certain portions. He said that the truest, and they, she agreed on this as well, is the truest calculation of blood alcohol is, I guess it was called whole blood, where you take the whole blood, and he talked about separating the water element and the serum elements of it. And it was kind of, fascinating in that sense, and learning that whole blood testing is the most accurate. And I don't think that they did that in Karen's case. I don't think they did that. I think it was a serum separation. And I could be wrong.
No, you're correct. That is what they did. And I do believe that the interesting thing to me about that piece of testimony was that when they were talking about the differences between what the hospital does and what what they would do as a criminologist, and when they talked about the fact that they didn't do any of those tests because they were constrained to the sample that was provided to them from the hospital. So I thought that was a very effective piece of Yannetti's cross, because he was able to basically, without her saying it, getting her to admit that's not how they would have done the testing if they had control over the, for instance, had they done the blood draw themselves and they had control over the sample. So it was that was another kind of, it's just one extra thing that the state police could have done at the beginning of this, had they been seriously investigating the murder of John O'Keefe, is they would have been able to say, oh, we're going to get a warrant to get a blood draw from her, and we're going to take that and go from there. But you can't pinpoint when she had her last drink, so you don't. Did she drink when she went home? You don't know any of that.
Yeah, and they talked about that today too.
Yeah.
Is it possible that she did have a drink when she? Yeah, I mean, it is possible. No, it is possible. And I love that. I think it became another feather in the cap for the defense, breaking this down to basics, and it ended up actually turning out and working out really well for them. So it was a good Commonwealth witness for the defense.
Yeah, it turns out that when the defense actually puts the work in, they're doing great. And I think I've mentioned, I'm not going to, it's no secret that I believe that they left a lot on the table in the first trial, and they were a little bit too cocky in their position and comfortable. And that's how we ended up where we were. They're not doing that this time. They really are. They're taking the steps to go through with each of these witnesses, highlight the inconsistencies from their prior testimony, and really dig into the scientific evidence in a way that's more comprehensive than they did in the last trial. And I think that bodes well for what's happening with the defense.
Yeah, we got Sharp Tack saying the blood witness was deceitful in her answering. She didn't want to admit certain things. It's true, but I think Yannetti extrapolated that out of her, no pun intended. But I think that he got what he needed out of her ultimately in the end. She danced. She knew she's there for the Commonwealth. She's going to play the dance. But when Yannetti, lays in and you're under oath, you have to tell the truth. Well, apparently you have to tell the truth. We're not seeing that in this case, but look, she's I don't think that she's a lab technician. I don't think there's any any skin in the game here. I think it's just, she probably had a stern talking from the Commonwealth and just said, hey, don't walk down this aisle. And obviously, Yannetti is very masterful at what he does, and ultimately getting the answers that he needed towards the end of that
and
cross.
I didn't really see her as being deceitful either. I think she was very careful in terms of how she answered. She wanted her answers to be technically correct. So I think she had a little bit of quarrel with some of the wording along the way, but I really didn't sense that she was intentionally trying to move the needle either way. I think she was trying, it seemed to me that she was trying her best to answer the questions, but that she also, semantics meant a lot, and she wanted to be scientifically accurate.
Did they challenge her? Did Yannetti challenge her on some of her credentials? I couldn't remember. I think towards the beginning of the testimony he did.
If it was this morning, I may have missed it. I had to go back and rewatch that during lunch, so I'm not sure.
I have to go back and watch it as well too. Maybe the chat knows. I think that he might have.
I was really trying to catch up by the end of lunch, so I watched her testimony on 3 times speed, so I definitely could have missed something.
JD saying, yeah, that we missed a lot today, except for Gallagher. It was weird because it felt like they went to the lunch break late, and I went to my mom's house to visit her, and then I was like, oh wow, they came back really quick to court. So I don't know if it was just me being out and missing about the hour and a half.
I think that they did take an abbreviated lunch. They normally take a little bit longer. I noticed that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So Kaylee's saying they did. They took a very quick lunch. So, okay. Well, look, we had the emergence of Ryan Nagel. Ryan Nagel testified, and I thought that he was one of the most strongest Commonwealth witnesses for the defense. Ironically enough, he puts himself there outside Fairview, driving by Karen Reed's vehicle, looking in, seeing Karen Reed, the old 10 and 2 dome light on, and saying that the only person that he saw in that black SUV, which is Karen Reed's Lexus, is Karen Reed. And that to me puts John inside the house, another witness that puts John inside the house. And again, I think he walked the line with the Commonwealth. He looked at times that he just didn't want to be there anymore. Like he's kind of over this and sick of it. I think he tried to tailor his testimony a little bit and change it, but at the end, Alan Jackson walked him right down the road and got it what he needed out of Ryan Nagel. What did you think about his testimony today, Jason?
I think you're spot on with what happened there, and I actually find it really interesting because I think Heather Maxson was exactly the same way.
Same thing.
Or she gave them the she's the only person that testified that she ever saw John in the SUV. So when they were making the initial turn, when they were both turning onto Fairview and they yielded and flashed to let Karen go, she stated that she clearly saw both the male and female in the SUV, and then later that she didn't. Another interesting part about her testimony is it just struck me that when she introduced herself to the jury, she had like this like professional moment where she was like, "Hi, my name's Heather Maxson," and I just watched it and I'm like, wow, it almost looks like she's done that before. And of course she has once, but it just kind of struck me that she was very bubbly and outgoing. And I don't think her testimony, it certainly didn't benefit the state in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I think the same thing with both Ryan Nagel and her. I don't think either of their testimonies. Hank was trying really hard with that stuff about the light being on and why is the light on in a car? What happens? Oh, he's trying to get them to say the door was open.
Right.
And I thought Ryan Nagel, when the one part of his testimony where I was a little taken aback was he was trying to dance around whether John was in the passenger seat or not, but he couldn't see because his view was blocked by Karen. I've been adjacent to other vehicles, and you can pretty clearly
you're going to see someone in that passenger.
I don't think the driver would obstruct your ability to tell if there was a passenger or not.
You're going to tell me that tiny, maybe 125-pound Karen Reed is going to block 6'2", 218-pound John O'Keefe? It's not happening. It ain't fucking happening.
Right. And I don't think that, and so that testimony, I don't think will move the needle for anyone. Again, he was hedging his bets, right? Well, I can't say for sure that there was nobody there, But, the truth of the matter is I also thought the part of Maxson's testimony where where Alan Jackson was talking about looking at, or, would you typically maybe be looking at your phone in that scenario? And that's all I could think of is, hey, I'm in that pickup truck. I pull up. We're waiting for someone to come outside. We know Ryan Nagel's actually texting his sister. And how, of course, the other ones very clearly could be looking at their phone. When Heather Nagel comes out and she's next to the car and they're speaking with her, there's all these times that someone else could have walked across the lawn or done these things where they simply may not have seen it. And it's so to me, at the end of the day, all of that testimony is more powerful about the fact that they've confirmed basically that John O'Keefe was not in the car and they didn't do anything to hurt the defense. So I like it.
Yeah. I noticed two things on her testimony as well, too. She was introduced. Well, Ryan Nagel, when he introduced Heather Maxson, he said, "I was there with my now ex-girlfriend, Heather Maxson." So that came out today. So they're no longer together. But I also thought was very interesting is that Jackson was focusing on that side door again to the house. And I remember in Jennifer McCabe's testimony, they asked her about that. And I'm wondering if there's more to that we're going to hear more about that, or if there's something that they know that happened at that side door and we haven't heard it yet. And this is really the first time we're hearing about it. I didn't remember hearing about this in trial one. And again, they had her kind of, I forget the question they asked her, but they asked her about that side front door that Jennifer McCabe pointed out, a couple days ago in her testimony. I don't know if you caught that.
I did. And when you're being a musician, right? When you're in songwriting, when they compose things for movies, right? It's all based on its theme and variation, right? So theme and variation, where you'll see these certain things that kind of keep coming back. They keep coming back and asking different wishes about them. I agree with you. There's something about that side door. Yeah. There's something there. We don't know what it is yet. We don't know where they're going, but it's a familiar theme that keeps recurring throughout the thing. So it's going to be exciting and interesting to see where they go with the witnesses on that.
Yeah. So then we had Katie, the crossbearer, McLaughlin, get up. She is now the first person in this trial to mention the harassment. So she wanted to get that on the record today. And I also made a note today. I don't know if you saw my tweet, Jason, but I said Ryan Nagel and Jennifer McCabe are now the only two Commonwealth witnesses at this point that have testified to talking about the feds talking to them. Trial 1, Ryan Nagel slipped and said feds. And then trial 2, a couple days ago, Jennifer McCabe obviously talked about the shoe salesman that rolled up on them, and she lied and said that her name was Julie. So
I didn't see your tweet today, but I'm with Mark Betterow in terms of that. To me, they've smashed that door open, and I don't know why we're pussyfooting around at this point. They should be able to explore that. It came out. She very clearly tried to use that as a way. It's weird because sometimes I have to figure out if Hank Brennan is a special prosecutor or if it's Jen McCabe. Like, I can't figure out which, what's happening in that direction there. But it was a very intentional try to drop it in. Interestingly enough, her being the one that brought in the harassment in the last trial, and it happening today with Katie. It was a far different result today. It went nowhere.
Yeah.
She tried to, and in fact, it almost seemed to surprise her, and she tried to bring it up a second time. Like,
yeah,
so
she did try to sneak it back in there. I saw that too.
And so I think that's something that the defense masterfully moved past. Like, that's like, he did a really good job getting past that without actually addressing it. She tried to say it. He rebuffed her and said, "You're not answering my question." She tried to say it again, and he walked right by it. So I do think that it was handled really, really well by Jackson to get around that today and not have it come in. I definitely was expecting to hear the word turtle boy. You know what I mean? Because that's they're all waiting out there to try and say. And the other thing is with Katie McLaughlin is really bad because so many of the things that she said are just not true. I mean, so you have the situation. Obviously, everyone can see the dancing around whether she's Caitlin Albert's friend or not.
Right?
And I just wish someone would say to her the semantics of, okay, maybe she's not your best friend, but you're clearly friends with her. You did these things, and because it really does almost seem like she's just too stubborn to say like that. I view my friends one way and my acquaintances another, and whatever else. But when she told the story, you and I talked about it briefly, when she told the story about the police officer overhearing the I hit him, and asking her, "What did you just say?" And Karen repeating, "I hit him," and then him saying, "Oh, go get Sergeant Goody. We got to get him over here and do this." None of those cops have testified to that. It's like it's completely made up. And when there's no room where you see it on the camera, like none of this is, it's really interesting. So she has these moments where she appears to make things up. The other thing was about the harassment of her prior to her testimony, when the truth is nobody knew that she was going to testify, that her harassment was based on her saying she didn't know Caitlin Albert.
Yeah.
And nobody knew that until she said it when she testified.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, people are just calling out your bullshit. I mean, that's it. I mean,
I'm going to get a clip there because I said her harassment, which means people are going to say that I admitted to her being harassed. But what she's referring to as harassment didn't occur until after that. And for her to come up and kind of make up this whole thing, I do believe, watching her and seeing her mannerisms, when they were initially talking about witnesses that were reluctant to come back and testify, she was the first one that popped in my head.
Probably.
There are rumors that she hasn't worked a day since her testimony in the last trial, that she's been out on leave for either PTSD or some kind of stress-related things. I don't know. Again, I'm not reporting that because they're rumors. I'm not speaking to the truth, but it almost wouldn't surprise me based on her demeanor that she really, there's more going on there, I think, than we know about.
Yeah. And I mean, look, it's, even just kind of looking at Ryan Nagel today. Yeah. I'm friends with all these fucking degenerates, but like they keep dragging me back in this thing and I got to be there. I mean, his body language is like, I don't want to be here at all. Like he was done. He's cooked. Like you can tell, like if this goes to another mistrial, he's going to be like, fuck this. I don't have time for this shit today. That's kind of the body language I got there. Yeah. In talking about Caitlin Albert, she's completely trying to distance herself from that. We obviously saw that for most of her testimony. And then we get into the I hit him. And I found it very ironic. And I put this tweet out today. All the people on scene that supposedly heard Karen Reed say that she hit John. It's so ironic that it's always 3 fucking times. It's always like, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Sure. And I think Mazza, I want to read Mazza's tweet here. He put a good tweet out. He said, you'd think if Karen Reed was running around a crime scene shouting, I hit him, and I'll add that 3 times, and now 4 times apparently by that change today too. Katie McLaughlin secured it 4 times, which is ridiculous. But Mazza goes on to say, I hit him. That would have been heard immediately and resulted in her arrest. Well, how about even this? Just even a detainment.
Yes.
Just even a detainment till we can ask some more follow-up questions here. He said that didn't happen. That's because it's a lie manufactured after the fact. Good on the defense for heavily emphasizing this key point for the second consecutive trial. I think it's a great tweet.
It is a great tweet, and he's right on the money, right? Because let's take it one step further. If you didn't get an arrest, you didn't get a detainment, do you think you would have put it in your report? Do you think that at the time they didn't even know the state police were going to be recused, so they probably thought that it was going to be one of their detectives investigating it? But even after the fact, they all wrote reports and they went back and edited reports and did expanded reports. Not one of those, not the patrol officer that heard it, not his supervisor, Sergeant Good, who I can tell you is not so good in terms of having dealt with him at several areas when we were outside the district attorney's office, for instance. Actually, the day you and I met, there seems to be there's a huge disconnect, and I hope the jury picks up on that, because the disconnect is that not only aren't any of those police officers, or I mean, maybe they're going to come now and testify that they heard it, but if they do, they're going to have to explain why they didn't do anything about it or put it in a report or do any of these things along the way. That's the part that gets me.
And then we have Katie McLaughlin, the note taker, writing notes on her glove. Apparently, did she say that she wrote things down that were happening at the scene, but discards that glove that has this pertinent information on it that she just could go right to an officer and say, hey, I took some notes too, but yeah, we threw away the notebook.
Yeah. Maybe that's what the police did too. Maybe that's why we never saw it in a report. They took notes about it happening and then they threw them away.
And they threw them away. All right, let me pull up this video. I want to watch a little bit of Katie McLaughlin's testimony here today. A couple of minutes of this, and we'll opine on this as well too. I'm going to boost the sound here.
Okay.
Pause it. Just to orient us, can you tell me where you are in that video?
I might be in the middle there, although I didn't get a good look.
With the yellow and the red.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like you to pay special attention, Mr. McLaughlin, to your right and your left hands as this video plays. Could we go ahead and play it? Pause it. What are you looking down at?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I would write like stuff on my glove. That's something I'll do as I'm getting the information. Was that your question about notes?
So you were taking notes.
That's just me jotting down the demographics.
Let's keep playing.
I love this
Is
part.
still the part of the interaction where my client is overly frantic and
I love this.
almost hysterical?
Me too.
That's the point where your client started to make the statements.
Oh,
Was she overly frantic and almost hysterical?
She was distraught.
Okay. Overly frantic and almost hysterical. You're using different words. I'm asking you about your words. Does this describe her as overly
I think the overly frantic and hysterical, I was describing the entire scene.
oh, now
she doesn't look overly frantic. Or
now it morphs into the entire scene, Jay. So you get what's going on here, right?
Yeah. It was good. That moment was really well, and I'm not sure if your other clip is the moment that I thought went swimmingly was when he got her to admit that the other paramedics were in the ambulance with the door closed in the metal ambulance over there at the time that the statements apparently occurred, because he is leading the jury right down the road to what all of us think happened, which is she went back to the firehouse. She told this story, and everyone else on scene who's repeated that story since is simply just doing some form of either unconscious bias where they believe they heard it, or they're intentionally just backing up their coworker.
I agree. All right, let's play on here.
hysterical.
Again, hard to say from a video, but
And according to you, well, that's actually, Ms. McLaughlin, it's easiest to say from a video, isn't it? It's a video.
yeah, I mean, she's kind of, she's not totally in view, and I mean, she wasn't standing there calmly, I guess.
Right. She looks hysterical to you.
She was upset. She was very upset.
Hysterical?
I might say hysterical. She was extremely upset.
Okay, and this is the point at which Ms. McCabe is saying, calm down, you're being hysterical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and play it. Pause it. So you indicated that this is the point at which, and we can leave the lights down for a second. I'm gonna play it again. This is the point at which you said my client had just said, I hit him, basically confessing to having hit John O'Keefe, correct?
Those are the statements she'd made.
Okay. And Officer Seraph is standing right there. Right?
Mhm. Yes.
You see any reaction from him right there?
I know he turned and told somebody to go get the sergeant. I don't know if that already played. I'm sorry.
Do you see any reaction from him?
He responded, "You what?" And she repeated it again, and then he told someone to get the sergeant.
I know that's what your statement is. I know that's your testimony. I'm asking about the video. Do you see him reacting right here?
You'd have to play it again. I wasn't looking at that part.
Do you see him handcuff my client?
Oh no.
Do you see him call anybody over to handcuff my client?
He turned to signal to get Goody down here. Is what?
So they handcuffed her.
No.
They didn't handcuff her,
No.
even though she just confessed in front of a police officer, according to you.
That's what she said.
I hit him. It's my fault. I did it. That's a confession, correct?
She said, "I hit him.
And
Oh, now it's 4 times.
It's 4
Jason.
times now. Yeah.
See how the story's evolved now? It's 4 times.
It is true. You know, it's interesting. It's one of
People
the
are
sure
sick.
signs.
You're sick, Jason. It's sick.
It's one of the sure signs that someone's lying is when they're watching under questioning now. Now they're watching the video and they're adapting their story to what she's seen there.
Tailor it.
Oh, I must not have seen that part, but that had just happened over there, or I did whatever else. And you don't see. The funny thing is you can clearly see him there, Seraph, and you don't see him turn to anyone. He doesn't turn to anyone. He doesn't say anything to anyone.
Karen.
Right. Yep. It's crazy. And he's right. There was no handcuffs. There was no detainment. There was no report.
I mean, if you have an officer that's down and there's a bunch of police officers there and you literally say in front of a police officer, "Hey, I hit him. Well, what'd you hit him with? That would be my first question. Did you punch him? Did you hit him with a purse? Like, what did you do? You hit him. Okay. And then I would be like, all right, well, we need to detain this person for a couple minutes to ask some questions.
Not only this, but there was another part of this, and I don't know if you're going to get to it, but there's another part of this that was crazy, which is Katie McLaughlin made it seem like Jen McCabe was trying to shut her up so she didn't get in trouble. I don't know if you saw that part, but she kept saying it like that, like, oh no, I mean, she was telling her, "Hey, cop, you're hysterical, like, don't say this," where the implication's crazy, right? The implication is that So what you're saying is Jen McCabe was trying to cover up the murder of John O'Keefe by Karen Reed? Like,
Yeah.
So we're all in agreement that Jen McCabe covers up murders. Is that like, is this news? Are you coming out with something here? So I thought that was the most kind of amazing part of her testimony that really takes all of her credibility away, in the sense that she was like, oh no, like she was telling her like, hey,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Before we go back to the video here and finish up with Katie, and then we're going to move on to Lieutenant Gallagher. My guest this evening, if you're just coming in, my guest this evening is Jason Broyles. He is the Twitter account, not Hailey Walbrecht, on X, and you can check him out there. And he's very much an open conversationalist about the Karen Reed case, and also one Aiden Carney. Again, make sure to smash that like button, comment in the chat here, comment after the video, of course. We're going to go back to the video here and finish up Katie McLaughlin's testimony, and then we'll go on to Lieutenant Gallagher.
Officer Seraph just stands there, and my client walks away, correct?
You'd have to talk to Officer Seraph about that.
Oh, yeah.
You should.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Objection.
objection.
So,
Yeah, that was a little good little back and
Dad.
forth.
I hit him. It's my fault. I did it. That's a confession, correct?
She said, I hit him.
And Officer Seraph just stands there, and my client walks away, correct?
You'd have to talk to Officer Seraph about that.
Oh, we have.
You should.
Mr. McLaughlin,
okay. So let's move on. Mr. Jackson, I'm not rushing you, but how much longer do you think you'll be?
not long.
Okay, so,
I can wrap it in a couple minutes.
okay.
Toward the end of this video. I'll send
Are you playing it again, or should we put the lights on?
if you can play it again.
Okay.
Continue. Pause it. You appear to be writing something down,
I could be.
and according to you, you're writing on your glove.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of glove?
Just a regular latex glove that we use on the ambulance.
You didn't have a notepad,
I probably did. Sometimes it's easier to just write it down on your glove.
but if you write, I hit him. On your
No, I did not.
So play it. Still appear to be writing something down, looking down at your glove.
I might be looking at it.
Pause it. Is this also an example of my client being overly hysterical?
I wasn't paying attention to her.
You have a
Now she's not.
Right.
It's, things like you
Whatever
said.
it was
Now,
that you were
no,
talking to
certain
Miss
part-
Reed about, it was important enough that you had a pin out. You were writing things down, correct?
Well, I was still finishing writing down some of the other.
Yes, no. It was important enough.
Yeah.
To write things down. Yes, or no?
Yes, I wrote down some of the things that were said.
Some of the things that were important, correct?
Yes.
For instance, you'd write down John O'Keefe. That's his name, right?
Right.
You might write down a circle with a slash through it. Allergies. No allergies, right?
Right.
You might write down 46 for his age.
Right.
You might write down how he was injured, hit by a car, correct?
I did not know that was. Well, I didn't know what those statements meant.
You might write down 3 little syllables. It was just told to you. I hit him, especially if it had been repeated 4 times as well.
Yeah, I had that in my head, and I was going to go tell them that.
And you had a pen right in your right hand writing things, correct?
Yeah.
You never wrote that down. Did you?
I wasn't going to write that statement down on the glove. I remembered that, and I went back to the ambulance and told them.
This is what you're talking about right here, Jason, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Any note that we have, correct?
No.
You didn't memorialize that statement on any glove that you were wearing, correct?
No.
Whatever you wrote down on that glove, where is that now?
Yeah, I don't have it, obviously.
I don't know how obvious it is. What'd you do with it?
You just scratch everything out and you throw out the glove.
Just threw it away.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Is that yes?
Yes.
So we don't know what was actually on or not on that glove, do we?
I didn't write those words down on that glove.
As we stand here, we don't know what was or wasn't on that glove.
Name, date of birth, no meds, no history, no allergies. And then I wasn't writing that statement down on the glove. I went back to the ambulance and just reported it.
And importantly, it was important enough, as you say, to go back and report the statement, but not important enough to write it down with that pen very conveniently in your right hand, correct?
It's not about importance. I was relaying that information to the ambulance verbally. I didn't need to write it down.
And you, in fact, didn't write it down, did you?
No, I didn't make a report about it.
And you're also
All right. So they're gonna go back and forth there about that. But yeah, I find it pretty critical information that you wouldn't write that down somewhere or make a notation. We got
I could actually see with her, if she said she didn't write it down, it wouldn't surprise me if she told somebody, but the police officers on scene not writing that in their reports and not reacting to it in any way, literally doing nothing with that kind of information, it's unheard of. And I don't think, a lot of people, those of us who are skeptical are like, oh, well, we see witnesses come back and say different things all the time. In this case, particularly, I don't think any one of those officers is going to admit to hearing that on the scene and not memorializing it in a report or telling their own supervisor or telling the state police or doing any of those things, which that basically boils down to two things. Because Katie McLaughlin made a huge error here in that she said the police officer that Seraph heard it. By the end, she identified that it was Seraph, that Seraph heard it, and that he told someone to go get Sergeant Good. She called him Goody, right? But she told someone to go get him. So there are two people, neither of whom testified to those things occurring, or three people, I should say, because whoever the third officer that was supposed to go get Sergeant Good, none of them testified to that. So who do we now believe?
Yeah. And listen, it's the most critical information at that point. If it was true, I mean, right. I hit him. Okay. Well, I've seen people detained for saying less than that at a scene, at a particular scene. I mean, I've seen people be detained for traffic tickets.
We literally in this trial saw somebody be detained and ultimately arrested for asking where he could stand. Bow. Yeah.
Yeah. Bow. Yeah. It's insane. And to think that that is a very critical piece of information at that particular point. And I would, if I was an officer and I heard that, I certainly would detain that person, start asking some follow-up questions like, first of all, you said what? So you get the, I hit him. Okay. What'd you hit him with? You hit him with a purse? Did you punch him? Like, let's get some more information about this. But it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. It wasn't in anybody's reports. The story is changing. It's been 3 times. You heard Jennifer McCabe earlier this week. The chaoticness of everything. But I know for sure that she said I hit him. And now we have the same thing. Katie McLaughlin, the craziness of the scene, and she was hysterical. But I remember not 3 times, but she said it 4 times. And the stories are evolving, and the bullshit's just evolving. And
it is really funny how you get these people that have these memories that are so amazing, like that they're able to pinpoint all of these details, and then they don't remember even the most basic things. That's
that detail they always can clearly remember. I clearly heard her say she hit him.
The funny thing is I actually believe, as someone, if you go back, and I'm a storyteller, my friends will all tell you, like I tell stories across 30 years and 40 years of things that have happened, and it's kind of what I do. And my friends will tell you, the ones who've heard them for 30 years, when they hear me retell the story, they're like, hey, you didn't used to have that detail in your story, or you added that, or you changed that. Over time, it's why, the first witnesses in this case were ridiculous, where they're talking about your memory getting better over time. That doesn't occur when you see people that are insisting on these. It happens to be a key detail that would prove the prosecution case, and they remember it perfectly, yet don't remember anything else. That's just a sign of very strong witness prep. And by witness prep, I mean completely leading and programming the witness to say what you want. You know?
And again, I've talked about this earlier, just in some earlier shows. everybody's crystal clear on direct. When they get to cross, no one can remember anything.
Yep.
Let's transition here. We'll talk a little bit about Gallagher today, and then we'll end with Turtle Boy, because it was a huge win for Turtle Boy today and for free speech here in Massachusetts, which is pretty cool. So we heard from Lieutenant Gallagher. We had him up a little bit. He talked particularly the things that some kind of stuck out to me. Obviously, we know about the Solo Cups, the Stop and Shop paper bags, the leaf blower. Some questions I have. You're the one at the scene with the leaf blower that discovers the cocktail glass. But when you're blowing around the snow, you don't find 47 pieces of tail light, which is a little weird to me, because if you would think if you're blowing around the snow and this tail light, like Trooper Paul said, exploded, essentially.
Yeah. No tail light, no sneaker, no.
Yeah.
You didn't find anything. Yeah.
And I think some other concerning things to me too was the process of the Canton Police Department in their evidence storage. And we heard about evidence storage logs, and that Gallagher cannot testify to know if they have logs or not at the Canton Police Department. You would probably think every officer that works there that deals with any collection or evidence chain would know certainly they have an evidence log and they're logging these items as they come and go. And he said, well, I just can't testify to that because there's only very strict people that, so you know about the very strict people that have access to that area, but you don't know if they log anything.
This is National Treasure, Book of Secrets all over again, right? Like you're going to find out who killed JFK, whether the UFOs were real. It's this information that they keep, but it's only two people have access to this information to know if it's true. It's one of those it's one of those really interesting scenarios where it's just none of us can know how that works.
Yeah. I think he played Forrest Gump today. I think he just kind of played like, what I'm seeing here, and I don't know if you're getting the trend here, a lot of people are starting to distance themselves from a lot of people. And I can't remember anything. I don't know if I heard it. Maybe Kerry said it. Maybe Sarah said it. I don't know. Everybody's starting to do one of these now, and I'm going to tell you why. In my opinion, I think the feds are still watching.
I knew where you were going with it because I agree with you wholeheartedly. If at least these people believe they are, right? And that's what you have to see to this, is that these people, I think, first of all, right, we have these witnesses who are segregated. Bullshit. They're not either watching the testimony or being prepped with the testimony of the previous witnesses. And I think that whole interchange with Jen McCabe probably scared the hell out of a bunch of people who didn't even know that happened. So you have these witnesses who, this has never been that there has to be 80 people involved in the conspiracy. We're talking about the very few people, Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, Brian Albert, Julie Albert, right? These people, or Nicole Albert, sorry. These people who are so wrapped up in the middle of this. And everyone else, maybe they just believe they're friends. You know what I mean? Or someone went to them and said, listen, she's guilty, but we really just need you to say this to get past this one part because we didn't, you see that's what you see a lot of times when you see the corruption. You'll see a police officer say, I didn't really have PC for that search, but can you just say you saw this to another cop? That's where they get in trouble, because once you've told that lie, you're now part of the conspiracy, even if you're not. So you end up in this situation where now, shit, I can't now go back on that, or I create this problem for myself. Add in the feds, and now that you just heard the feds showed up and knocked down Jen McCabe's door in the manner that they did, you have these people they probably really are scared because they helped cover up a murder and they didn't even know they were doing it, So I think that you really have to look at people's motivations. But back to Gallagher defended the use of the Solo cups. He defended the use of the paper bags.
Liquid perfectly.
And he defended the use of the leaf blower. And in fact, he bragged about it and championed it, that he's the one that did it. Yeah. Because a guy like Gallagher, now we're talking about his legacy. He retired, and he's either the laughing stock who fucked up the prosecution of the murder of a police officer, or he's a genius for coming up with this leaf blower idea. Well, I know which version of the story I'd be telling if I were Gallagher. This is the smartest thing anyone's done in the history of law enforcement. But it's not. And clearly there are a million reasons why that's horrifically dumb. And the fact that you're blowing evidence around, you're doing all kinds of things, but they didn't seem to have much concern for actual proper collection of evidence anyway. So
yeah, and I agree with that. I want to play a little bit of Gallagher's testimony, and I'm going to be honest with you today. There was a moment when AJ was crossing, and again, I'm not a legal analyst, but I just listened to things, and I think there was a little bit of an oh shit moment here today. Jason and I were talking about this in the green room, and where I caught it was when Jackson was talking about, you did everything, like you'll hear him say, you did everything you could in an emergency situation. And I went, oh no. I went, I don't, maybe Jackson slipped here. Again, I'm not Jackson. I'm just making my own assumption. And I went, oh shit. Like, I think he's going to lead Gallagher into an area where Gallagher's going to be able to defend himself here. And he does. And he goes, and you'll hear Gallagher say, and you just said it, Mr. Jackson, that we did everything in an emergency situation. But then Jackson comes out of it and I think saves it and comes back and then goes into the contamination of the containers that you use to store this said evidence at the scene, and kind of got him on that. So let's play a little bit of that. I want to catch that moment and see what everybody thinks here. And I want to get your opinion on this as well too, Jason. Let's just pull this up and we'll get to that part right here.
Yeah. What did you do in that regard?
Remember, I sent Sergeant Good to get the leaf blower.
Got it. You also know that Canton PD has evidence collection bags at Canton PD.
Yes.
You also know that they have
that little smile I thought was pretty good from Liz Little to Karen, after that small exchange there. But we're going to hear this part here.
Materials and tools to gather biological material, correct?
We do have swabs, yes.
And those swabs go in little containers to maintain their sanitary nature, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
In other words, if you see a blood stain, you don't just walk up with a Kleenex that you find on the ground and wipe it up. There's your blood stain. There's a process for gathering that type of evidence, correct?
Sure. If you're looking for DNA, you can use a bloody Kleenex, to your point.
It'd be kind of an emergency.
Yeah, absolutely. My point exactly.
But if you're a mile from the Canton PD,
Yeah,
you could have gone back and done the swab,
could have.
but you didn't.
Didn't want to because of the weather, because you just said because it's an emergency, and we thought it was an emergency there. I mean, the storm was coming down terribly, and I believe if we didn't collect that biological matter, we weren't going to get that biological matter.
Okay, so here's a good point. See Karen, she's now going to write a Post-it note and hand it to Liza or slide it to Liza. And this is where I think Jackson got a little fucked here, but he ends up getting his way out of it. And again, I could be wrong. This is just kind of what I'm analyzing. Jason, how do you feel about this?
I think that, no, I think you're right. I think that he got a little bit ahead of his skis there and kind of gave him an out. With Karen writing the part that you just brought up, though, one of the things that I always love about this case is the level to which Karen Reed is involved in her own defense. Mm-hmm. As being in remission for cancer, as we've talked about in previous shows, one of the things that I wrote a lot while I had cancer about was being your own advocate as a patient. And it's kind of the same thing. So I really love to see Karen. She has such a command of the details and how she wants her to be defended. So I really love seeing that. But I do agree with you. He definitely put himself in a position where he gave Gallagher an excuse.
You can kind of see Alessi here too, with his head in his hand. Again, he might be just wiping his brow, but the scene that we're kind of.
I do hate the over analysis of people. Yeah. We'll talk about that when we get to the Turtle Boy piece in a minute. But
yeah. I'm going to back up about 20 seconds and we'll play through. And I want everybody to keep an eye on this. Again, I think Jackson slips a little bit here. You kind of see Karen react to it. She's going to write a Post-it note, get it to Liza. Liza's the closest person to AJ, so probably would signal him, but he ends up working his way out of this. And that's the masterful part about Jackson, is that he's so good. And I think he probably even realized, probably one of those panic moments like, oh, fuck. and then gets him on the contamination of the containers and kind of reels it back in. All right, let's play this.
Got the swab,
Could have.
but you didn't.
Didn't want to because of the weather, because you just said because it's an emergency, and we thought it was an emergency there. I mean, the storm was coming down terribly, and I believe if we didn't collect that biological matter, we weren't going to get that biological matter.
But Canton PD was a mile and a half away, 4 or 5 minutes.
In a blizzard.
Still, in a blizzard, look, it's 3 minutes in good weather, probably 4, 5, 6 minutes in a blizzard, correct?
I'm not sure.
So let's call it 12, 15 minutes.
Here's the note to Liza. She's got a note.
If you wanted to, you could have dispatched one of your officers to go back and get swabs.
See the note?
And properly collect the blood material.
Sure. And I believed 15 minutes would have made a difference.
And what you did instead.
She was trying to actually give it to AJ.
I think so too. Yeah. I think that Karen realized he walked into an area. He gave him a little bit of a leash there, but he's going to pull it back in here with the contamination of the containers. Let's play a little bit more and then we'll talk about
Well,
that. We'll end with Turtle Boy today.
15 minutes would have made a difference, but you asked Sergeant Good to drive to his house and get a leaf blower.
Yes, and while he was doing that, we were documenting the scene with photographs.
You could have documented the scene with photographs even if you went back and get a swab. What's the difference?
Because we were ongoing. It was ongoing. I wasn't leaving the scene.
I didn't ask you to leave the scene. I didn't ask if you were
I
leaving the scene.
needed the other officers. We talked about scene security. I already let one officer go. I now have 3 left. We're securing that scene.
So you saw pink stains in the snow, correct?
That's correct.
And you said, Officer Good, probably called Sean, Sarge, go home and get a leaf blower.
That is correct.
Could have said, Officer Mulaney, get your butt over to Canton PD and pick up 10 swabs, correct?
He wouldn't have had access to the swabs.
Oh, so now one of your officers could have gotten the swabs, even if the lieutenant, the ranking lieutenant had dispatched him to go get a swab.
Because he doesn't have access to the BCI, the Office of BCI, where our stuff is kept.
Could you have made a phone call?
No, nobody there would have had access at that time. It was only Officer Dever on the desk.
So you're the only person that could have gotten those swabs?
Sergeant Lang could have gotten them as well.
So Sergeant Lang could have too?
Sure.
But you didn't say that?
No, definitely didn't.
Okay. What you did do, however, is you went to the neighbor's house. That would be Tom Kellerman, right?
The lieutenant of detectives, yes.
Right. And Lieutenant Kelleher gave you red Solo cups.
Yes. I asked for plastic or glass
so
containers.
proud of this shit, too.
He had Solo
I know.
cups.
Yep.
And
I was the one that got the Solo cups and the leaf blow. I coordinated. He's so fucking happy about this.
I coordinated getting everything except for the proper things.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it kind of goes on here a little bit more. And then Jackson's going to kind of reel him back in and talk about the contamination. You know, he talks about, look, you know, you have containers that are sterile. You pay extra money through the department to have these sterile containers versus, you know, a red Solo cup, which the bag was, it was even open. It wasn't even a sealed bag. And then you're storing all of this evidence in. And I talked about this, and I started to really bring this up over some pretrial shows before going into the retrial. And I said, look, you know, I hope the defense is listening to this, because I think they had more meat on the bone here to start exploiting all this shit. And it took me back, and I had this idea when I started watching Netflix, and they had an updated O.J. Simpson documentary, and they talked about when the defense went into the war room, they went, okay, where do we start? And then it popped into their head, and I forget who it was. It might have been Johnny Cochran or F. Lee Bailey. He said, look, you know, we have hundreds of hours of footage from the news media that had that camera out in front of Nicole Brown Simpson's house for hours, you know, collecting all this evidence. Well, let's take a look at the way that they collected it and exploit it. And it worked. It worked because DNA at that time was just getting introduced into cases. Obviously, the jury wasn't going to understand all of it, but if I can exploit that and say this DNA, these blood samples and all these, you know, fingerprints and bloody shoe prints, this is all contaminated. It's gone. It's down the line and down the drain. And I think they have an opportunity here to, you know, definitely exploit this said blood evidence and wash all this away. No pun intended. How do you feel about that, Jason?
I think in this case, it's not obviously they didn't get anywhere with the coagulated blood in the snow, because even the description, what I think they should have done, where they talk about, we put it in a refrigerator. So you put blood in a cup with basically water that was going to turn into water and left it sitting in a refrigerator. Why didn't you put it in a freezer? At least preserve it in its blood form.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you put it in a refrigerator so that it would melt and then dilute the blood sample, I guess. So I guess it wasn't really that genius there, Lieutenant Gallagher. But you have this whole scenario there where I do think it's good in this case to show the ineptitude of the Canton Police Department in terms of their scene management. And actually, I missed that clip earlier, missed it listening live. I must have got distracted by something when he talked about, well, we had to keep the officers for scene security. What a joke. They didn't have a crime scene log. He brought that tent, but I don't see any record of him ever having set it up, despite finding biological evidence on the ground in a snowstorm, in a blizzard. If you set that tent up, it would have given it some measure of protection. You could have put the pop-up at a lower setting to preserve that until you could get an actual crime scene technician to come out and look at that evidence on site and collect it properly. There's all kinds of things that they screwed up in this process. So it really does baffle me when he's proud of it. But that whole snarky, I'm going to get in a little pissing contest back and forth with you, Alan, and say, I couldn't let those officers go for scene security. That was the least secure crime scene I've ever seen. And what did they do before they even got through finding the rest of the evidence? They packed up their stuff, they pulled the tape, and they left. And why did they do that? You know how we know why they did that? We know because Ken Berkowitz went to that reporter and said, don't mention that this was Brian Albert's house. Brian Albert didn't want crime scene tape on his lawn. He didn't want people standing around there. The Canton police left it his to honor his wishes. That's why they left. It's unheard of that they abandon a crime scene in the way that they did here. Not only didn't they secure it the first time, they just said, oh, let's pat ourselves on the back for our ingenuity with leaf blowers and solo cups and Stop and Shop bags. And that's it. We've done enough here. That's going to look good for us. Let's go.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It is. It's crazy. And I definitely agree. Before we get into the last segment here, I just want to make sure everybody, please smash the like button down there below. My guest this evening is Jason Broyles. He is the creator of the Not Hailey Walbrecht account on X, free Karen Reed supporter, and a Turtle Boy supporter as well. And really takes it to the other side on X, which I always love watching your tweets. Let's talk about the win for one Aiden Turtle Boy Carney, and I think free speech in Massachusetts today as well. Jason, what happened today? Let us know. And this was phenomenal when I saw this pop up today.
I actually think it's really interesting that you and I haven't talked about this, because this hearing was last Wednesday, and it was actually kind of unusual that the judge took it under advisement, right? Because normally on a motion to revoke a bond, you probably want to decide it while you have the defendant present in order to be able to take them into custody. So it was a fairly good sign that Judge Doolin didn't do it that day. But I have to admit, it was close. I will say that I did when I saw Aiden post it today, the first thing that I did was retweet it. Mm-hmm. And the second thing that I did was send him a message that said, about effing time. And I'm not ashamed to say his reply to me was that it was a close one, because it was. Yeah, it really was. We shouldn't have been in this situation. But the fact that you and I haven't talked about it, you were actually in court in the Karen Reed trial that day, listening to the testimony of Jen McCabe, while I was 30 feet away from you in the other courtroom, listening to this hearing and taking 7 pages of notes. And honestly, Jess Machado did such a good job that I didn't even end up by tweeting much about it, because she was pretty accurate in her description of what went on. But I definitely had a lot of thoughts. And what I will say is that the things that struck me the most, it's kind of the reason that I'm into this true crime, that I've done it. I'm always very interested in the lawyering, which is why I like having the conversation that we just did about where did AJ go, and did he step too far this way or that way. And it struck me as up until this hearing, and I've been to a few Turtle Boy hearings, and I followed the case pretty religiously in terms of covering what's happening there. Cosgrove always struck me as someone who was, had been kind of put out to pasture and came back past his prime and did things. I saw him a little bit differently in this hearing, because when he was standing up there basically mocking the First Amendment and making arguments that I thought were basically disgraceful for someone who's a former judge to make, I really walked away thinking that, I always thought that Mello was an idiot, but also that I didn't give him any credit for just being dumb, in the sense that he was also someone who was intentionally doing this, and he knew that what he was doing was wrong. But Cosgrove, I always gave the benefit of the doubt up until this hearing. It started slipping for me in the last hearing where he pulled the surprise motion to revoke. But then when he did this one, when I heard his arguments in person, as I really left there thinking, like, not only, yeah, sure, this guy's lost a few steps, but he's actually a part of the corruption.
Mhm.
Like, this was the first time that occurred to me, that Cosgrove moved over to this I hate Turtle Boy side, to the point that he lets it affect his integrity. And I walked out of there, I was sick to my stomach, frankly.
Yeah. But it's good. We had a decision come down today. It says a hearing held in this matter on April 30th, 2025, after review of papers. And Evans submitted. The motion is denied. The words stated by the defendant, and I love this now, because what have they officially called him? They have officially called Aiden a journalist instead of a fucking blogger, because he is a journalist. On his YouTube live video on April 26, 2025, did not mandate revocation of his bail pursuant to the law, and the comments do not violate the court's order to have no contact, direct, indirect, with a witness, nor do they, without more, constitute a new criminal offense.
And that's the part right there. That last
such a win.
sentence is amazing, because not only did he get it right, and I have to say that Doolin has been pretty solid on these things. And I was a little bit, I think we were mostly worried, because he did say it was a close call in court. In court, he was talking about how Aiden was walking the line.
He says he's walking the line.
And he definitely seemed upset over the comment about revenge. If you listen to it in context, Aiden was saying that Jesus is telling him that he should have revenge. Like, the whole thing is ridiculous. It's clearly satire, but that was the word that Doolin focused on in court. Actually, an interesting moment in that hearing that doesn't that those who didn't see it didn't really notice. But one of the things, Tim Bradel was so amazing on the First Amendment and was so passionate in his arguments. That was great. But unless you watch it, what you don't see is, just like Karen writing that Post-it note, Aiden was getting his attention to confer with him, and Bradel stops and says, "Can I confer with my client?" Because Aiden picked up on that. Bradel was in the zone, and he was going for what he was going for, and he didn't pick up on the judge wanting him to explain that revenge comment, that was the sticking point for the judge. And so Bradel was like a train going down the tracks, and Aiden stopped him and said, "No, hang on a minute." And it was so funny, because it was like we shared a brain for a moment, because as I was sitting in the pews, as I like to call them, feels like you're in church. As I was sitting in the spectator gallery, I just wanted to yell out, "He means karma, not revenge." You know what I mean? I wanted to yell it out. And Aiden, afterward, that I had a chance to have a conversation with him, that's exactly what he did when he got Bradel's attention, and he said, "He's saying revenge, but what I meant was karma." So he was able to get it out. So it was an interesting moment in that courtroom. And I think at the end of the day, I really felt like Doolin was, just because he didn't decide on the spot, I really felt like he wasn't going to revoke. But the gift that we got in that order was that last sentence where he basically said, "and without more, it doesn't constitute a crime." So that's basically Doolin saying, you don't even have probable cause to charge him. And that was the question we all had that day in court, which is, if you're here in court saying you need to revoke his bond because this is witness intimidation, why didn't you file charges?
Right.
why aren't we seeing you coming in front of the judge saying we're charging you? You did that with the video from in front of D&E Pizza. So why didn't you do it here? You're saying
Right.
that he
Yeah, the
witness
opportunity.
intimidated Tully. Now this
Yeah,
is
you
your
had the
chance.
opportunity.
Right. And frankly, it would have made their bail revocation motion stronger, but you're not even. So what now what you're showing us, what you're demonstrating is you're not actually even trying to do anything other than put him in jail. Like it has become the state's mission, the Commonwealth's mission in Norfolk County to put Aiden Carney in jail. That's it.
I'll give you a little fun fact, and then I want to end on a couple of things I want to ask you about, and then we'll end the show. Here's a little fun fact. When that situation went down with the webcam out in front of D&E, right? I did a FOIA request to try to get the Canton Police Department report, because naturally you would think that Albert would pick up the phone and call the Canton Police Department, get them involved and make a report. Guess what? It was never handled by the Canton Police Department. It went directly to Morrissey's office. So Albert
Lieutenant Tully.
Picked up the bat phone and called Tully immediately.
Right. So the affidavit, and where have we seen that, right? Where have we seen that? We saw literally while Aiden Carney was at Lindsay Gaetani's apartment, we had Tully and Mello on the phone.
Yep. While
he was there, she secretly was holding the phone on the phone with them.
Yep.
And the other thing is Tully is the supposed victim of intimidation in this latest bond revocation motion where they didn't file charges. Is Tully scared? Is Tully feeling harassed? None of that's true. This is all purpose driven, like it's been from the beginning. Tully's not afraid of Aiden Carney. He doesn't care about that one bit. He's not witness intimidated. It's not going to make him not testify. In my last point on this before we move on.
Yeah.
We have these scenarios where you can't really use fighting words to a cop. So when people are saying, when they try to do these prosecutions for what's the word I'm looking for? They try to prosecute people by saying they're it's not obstructing justice. It's sorry, my ADHD is kicking.
It's
out.
okay.
My point is it's when people are causing a disturbance, right? So they're out there and they're causing a disturbance and they are yelling at a cop or they're swearing at a cop and the police officer says, oh, it's disturbing the peace, right? So the police officer says the police officer says they're disturbing the peace because they yelled at me and said this, or they said a swear out loud and I heard it. The police officer cannot be the victim in those cases because police officers, by the nature of their job, are supposed to have a higher tolerance. So under the First Amendment fighting words exception, you're not allowed to, if you're provoking somebody into a fight, it's not considered free speech, but you should not be able to provoke a police officer into a fight because he's duty bound to a higher standard than a member of the general public is. That's how it should be in these witness intimidation cases. The fact is Tully is not feeling intimidated. Tully is feeling like he always has, that he's going to find a way to put Aiden Carney in jail to get him to stop writing about this case.
Yep. Yeah. And it's funny because that email, I shared it directly with Aiden when I got the response to that. And whoever responded to me, I forget who was one of the women in the office said, "Oh, we never handled that. That went right to the DA's office." And I shared it immediately with Aiden. So we had the information. I said, "Look, I mean, they just went right to the bat phone." And he's like, "Yeah, pretty much." He just wrote me back. So I pretty much figured that's what they did. But
yeah, that's how it goes now. That's how it goes now. Lieutenant Tully is the personal police officer of the enemies of Aiden Carney.
Yeah,
that's how it is.
100%. Let's do a couple quick rundowns here and then we'll end the show. And I want to appreciate you for jumping on the panel tonight and hanging out here. If everybody hasn't smashed that like button down below, please do. We'll do a couple rapid fire and then we'll end the show today. Jennifer McCabe, what did you think?
She's a liar.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought this was the one word response. Sorry.
No, if you want to, I
like that game.
Opine a little bit, please do.
I think that she tries way too hard. I think the truth of the matter is from day one, she's been neck deep in this, not something a witness does. the whole, we're going to get our story straight. We're going to go through all of that. This is the number one thing that in the beginning of this made me sure that Karen Reed was not guilty, was the amount of effort put in to, I always said, and my tweets will say that going back to the birth of Hailey Walbrecht. I always said that, well, I never say who I think murdered John O'Keefe because it's not my job to find out, right? But I always say, but there was a cover up. They covered something up that night at 34 Fairview. And the only thing that makes sense to me is that they covered up his death, because I can't figure out what else they'd be covering up. That's why a lot of people think Colin went in the house, because there was this immediate push to say Colin was never in the house. Matt McCabe's the guy was never in the house, referring to John O'Keefe.
Right.
There's all of these things that make no sense in any other circumstance other than the fact that they had something to hide and they were trying to do it. And Jen McCabe, do I think she was involved in the murder of John O'Keefe? Absolutely not. But she was most definitely involved in the cover-up of the murder of John O'Keefe. In fact, some say that she's running the show. And that's what my impression of her is.
She's the director of the band. She's the orchestrator. What do they call that? The orchestrator? Conductor. In my opinion, I think that's where we're going. You know, I had a thought here today, and I was thinking about Hank Brennan. And I want to go back to just the hearing with the voir dire with ARCA. And I thought about this today, and I want to hear your take on this. So we had the voir dire with ARCA. It's outside the presence of the jury. Bob Alessi does the argument, and then we have Hank Brennan do the direct on Dr. Wolf. We see during that hearing, and this is, again, keep in mind, this is outside, and I want to keep everybody in the audience thinking about this. This is outside the presence of the jury. We hear Hank essentially loses shit, and I think he's just faking it. I think he wanted to lay into Wolf, knowing that the jury wasn't there, to see what kind of cards that Wolf was going to give him when they get him out in front of the jury. I think it was a practice session. If I can rattle this guy and get him, and I can build him up and get him, what's going to happen when I get him out in front of the jury? And I think he was trying to test that tactic, and it didn't work because Wolf didn't shake. What do you think about that?
So I had some thoughts about that at the time that it happened too. And I was, because it's a curious question, right? So we all know, or you should know if you don't, and take it from me, that a lot of times you see these lawyers get up and argue in court, and they'll go after each other, right? And it'll be very dramatic, and they do it in front of the jury. And much like our politicians, sometimes you could go to the local watering hole down the street right after court, and they'll be sitting there laughing and drinking together and hanging out, right? And so things outside the presence of the jury, usually the indignation is it's much less. So if it's just in front of the judge, sure, you may raise your voice a little to pound your hammer on the thing a little bit to emphasize to the judge that you mean business and that this is an important point to you. But what he did that was so performative along the way, my impression of that was, you have this scenario where we have this affidavit, and who knows what's true and not true, right? But you have this affidavit filed right before that in Carney's case. Or I'm sorry, it wasn't for that. We have this affidavit filed in Carney's case, and that affidavit says that Jen McCabe went to Morrissey and said, unless you jail Aiden Carney, I'm not testifying, right? And we know the defense knew about this, presumably because they filed this motion,
right,
to get this information. So that stuff, that edge of it would have happened before the arc of voir dire. And my thought is that very well might have just been a message to Jen McCabe that we mean business, and that we're gonna go after these people, and that we're doing this stuff. Like that's how I felt. He was performing for somebody, and I can't figure out who. So he's either performing for Jen McCabe or he's performing for the camera. None of it makes a lot of sense, not in the presence of the jury, just to the judge. Or maybe he thought he was going to sway the judge. I don't know, but
yeah, it was an interesting. And I think, again, I'm going to kind of go to this, and I agree with, your points, but I think it was a little bit of a practice session to see what he was going to get out of Wolf. And Wolf didn't even sweat once during the whole thing.
I think, I mean, I see what you say makes a lot of sense, right? Because that is something that I'm going to probe this person to see where I'm
he
going to
lands,
get
right.
him, where I'm going to hurt his feelings, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I do it on Twitter all the time.
You do.
And it's something
You
that we'll
do.
do. Like I'm gonna throw some things out there to see what gets the response that I'm looking for.
I
and
had a
that's
good
how I know.
I had a good comeback with Kate Peter today. She was I don't know if you saw her tweet. She said that oh look, it was just like literally like 7:00 in the morning. It's fucking
Yeah.
raining out. People still
I
just showing
replied
up
to
for
it.
court.
I saw that
She's
too.
like, oh look, there's 10 free Karen Reed supporters here today. And I said the fact that there's 10 free Karen Reed supporters there now and that you only showed up once to support John says a lot.
It sure
Says
does.
a lot.
That's an amazing reply. I replied to that tweet too, because the first thing that I do, I love a lot of those people on the ground. They're my friends. I talk to them all throughout the day. And the first thing that I did is I said, hey, what time was this picture taken? And they know right away from where they
7 in the
were at
morning.
that time or whatever else. And by 8 a.m., nobody can be on those stairs.
Yep.
And that's an hour before these hearings start. We know that Karen gets there between 8:45 and 9 or whatever else. So by 8 a.m., no one can be on those stairs. There's also, if you go to the Resistance to Silence Facebook page, you can see footage of Karen getting stuck in traffic on her way into court and having great conversations with the streets that are aligned with her supporters at the moment that she's having those conversations. So not only are the people there, most of them don't stand on the steps of the courthouse because then they just have to walk back to the other section. It's all garbage. But the fact that you're on Twitter trying to make an issue out of it shows your desperation, so that's how I feel about that with Kate, which is you'd probably be better off just not mentioning it because you just put the ball on the tee for us to smash it out of the park and A, prove you wrong, and B, make your attempt look ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. Let's end on this point. Had a big thought today, and I think one of the big sticking points going forward for me, when this witness gets on the stand and testifies to the injuries on John's arm, I think Hank is going to have a big problem with Garrett Wing. I think Hank is going to be swimming in shit to find his way out of that testimony.
Listen, we all know that the ARCA witnesses should be the most impactful, right? But we also know in the last trial they weren't, and I think we know why, because people, the jury thought the insurance company hired them. Garrett Wing is the witness that I was most excited about being added to the witness list in this trial. So as important as I think ARCA is, and I think that I have all kinds of faith that the defense is going to do a much better job in framing that issue out now that they know about the insurance company thing. Because even if they can't mention the feds, they can certainly say, and you weren't hired by an insurance company, right? They can explore that.
Yeah.
Garrett Wing is the witness that I don't think he's going to have anything for, and I don't know. He may have tried. You can't. I know a Garrett Wing. I know somebody just like Garrett Wing in real life. Who is an active law enforcement officer in another state, a state police canine trooper and trainer, and he literally runs the state trooper classes. And when I showed him a picture of John O'Keefe's arm initially, I didn't give him anything. I said, "Can you look at this arm and tell me what you think about this photograph?" And he said, "Who got in a fight with a German Shepherd?" Those were his exact words. And very similar to what Garrett Wing is going to get on the stand and testify to. And it's going to be really hard for them to go after his credibility.
I agree.
I worked for a home services company as an IT director. And, they used to have salesmen that would go out and try and sell people air conditioning systems or plumbing systems or whatever else they were going to do. And the company that I worked for had a different tech. They had the technicians did all the sales. They put them on a commission program, did all kinds of things, and sales blew up exponentially because the people that have credibility are the people who actually do this work in the field. So you can put a PhD up there to talk about theoretical this and everything else, but Garrett Wing is somebody who those jurors are going to listen to because he walks the walk and he talks the talk, and he's the one. I don't care what you think the doctor thinks about dog bite injuries. Even Dr. Russell, who has amazing experience in that, it pales in comparison to a canine trooper trainer who literally sees those dog bites for a living, instructs dogs on how to bite people, evaluates dogs biting people. like you're not going to find a better expert than Garrett Wing.
Yeah. I'm anticipating that that testimony. All right, everybody. That's going to end the Monday windup here. Jason Broyles, not Hailey Walbrecht, on X. Can you give them your X handle so they can follow you?
Yeah,
there, Jason?
it's at HW on your case.
Phenomenal. Again, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Comment down below after this video post. And I will be back on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Jess Machado, courtroom insider of the Karen Read retrial. She's there, and we're going to get her insight on Wednesday with the Wednesday night rundown. I can't wait for that. And thank you again, Jason, for joining the show. Please come back anytime. I'd love to have you here.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
All right.
Thanks for having
everybody,
me.
go watch Turtle Boy. He just started. Take care. Have a good night. We'll see everybody on Wednesday. Peace.